This was me standing on Mount Everest on the 26th of May, 2012 at 6:55 a.m. and with our Singapore flag, of course. In so doing, thank you. Thank you. In so doing, I became the first Singaporean to climb Everest for charity, and I also became the first Singaporean doctor to do so. I raised over $40,000 for the Tan Tock Seng charity fund for needy patients. I also set up a clinic in the Himalayan village of Fort Se, and I also helped out a school in another village. By hearing this story and seeing this picture, how many of you think I was successful? Thank you. This is where I would like to say many of you are wrong. What if I say there's more to it than this picture? What if I say it's beyond the story that I just painted? What if I say that in every success there is indeed an untold failure? What if I showed you this video?
Okay, this is a climb from Camp 1 to Camp 2. Two of my fellow friends have decided to go back because they were feeling a bit unwell. And I was made to, not really made, I had to go forward to Camp 2 because no one will know the path otherwise. And I have a GPS with me, it maps out the path. So the guides, so the two of them have left, and then two porters, they're nowhere to be seen. They're so fast, they're all the way up there, I can't see any of them. They asked to follow the footsteps. The footsteps are being covered up with the snow too fast, such that I can't even see anything. See, it has been this weather, this crappy weather, the entire time. Can't see anything except for this few flags. It's 5,850 meters right now. I'm very tired. There's no one around, and I have no information about what's going to happen next or where is Camp 2. Why am I doing this? Hopefully I get back safe. Yeah, and the snow is damn thick. Wearing snowshoes like this also, it's like sinking into the snow. Okay.
So that was a video of me being lost on one of my training climbs, not knowing whether I was going to come back safely or remain on the mountain forever. I took 1 year of no pay leave, which was very difficult to get approved. I had to quit my first year of specialist training program, which was much sought after. With no business mind or contacts, I had to sell my ideas to sponsors to help fund my idea of climbing Everest. And most of all, I had to risk my life to achieve this dream of mine. So there's so many stories which none of you might have known if just by seeing that photo that I showed during the first slide. Just like that, there's two stories to every picture. There's many failures and sacrifices and obstacles that one has to go through to actually achieve the success in the end. Some of us are just too caught up with the immediate thing that's presented to us that we can't take a step back and ask ourselves, is there more than meets the eye? This is a picture of Mount Mustaq Atta. It was my first training climb. It's located in Xinjiang in China. When we were at Camp 2, we were going to proceed to the summit, and the weather came in, it was very bad. And we were thinking whether to turn back or to head on. We saw this bunch of Belgian climbers returning hurriedly from the summit. We asked them, "Do you summit?" And they all said, "Yes, we did." We were like, "Congratulations." And then they left as soon as they saw us. And we were thinking, if these guys can do it in this horrible weather, so can we. We were contemplating. And it took us a long time to actually decide this is not safe. It's time for us to turn back. And we turned back. And we heard this story from base camp that these climbers actually reached the summit. And on the summit, the bad weather occurred, the whiteout occurred. They couldn't see what was in front of them 10 meters ahead. So they lost their way to Camp 2. And they had to dig a hole in the snow, and they had to camp out there for the rest of the night. One of the climbers, he lost 7 fingers due to frostbite. And he was a physiotherapist. But when these climbers actually go back to Belgium, people ask them just like me, "Do you summit?" And they'll say yes. And they'll say, "Congratulations." But in this success that's perceived by everyone around, this guy had his biggest failure. He lost his fingers, he lost his career as a physiotherapist, and probably he would not be able to do any more of his dreams that he hoped to achieve one day. On the same mountain, which was pitched as my easiest climb, because it's my first climb, so I thought I could take an easy mountain. People thought it was my biggest failure because I didn't summit the mountain. But instead, that became my biggest success, and I'll tell you why. The tall guy in the middle standing is Tock Seng. He's of Kazakh origin, he's a nomad, and he was my porter that we hired to ferry some of the loads up and down the mountain. He had 7 children, but 4 of them passed away due to the high infant mortality rate over there. And the remaining 3 children, he brought them to base camp. And one night, his daughter got scalded by hot water. And he didn't know whether to bring her to the nearest medical facility because it was 1 day's drive away. Not only would it mean that he has to spend all the money, spend money for transport, he would have spent money in the hospital, as well he has to stop working for 1 week, which would mean almost half his yearly salary gone. So it's a hard decision for him, knowing that these are the minor ailments that went unnoticed and killed his other 4 children. So he was wanting to wait it out. The second night, the daughter was crying away in pain, and he didn't know what to do. He was going from 10 to 10 looking for someone who could help him. And he came across me, being a doctor. And I saw her. Her face was smeared with Colgate. And it was dressed with a dirty piece of gauze. All I did was clean the Colgate away, change a new piece of gauze, and gave her some painkillers. And by that afternoon, the daughter was just playing around with the rest of the kids. That night, I'll still remember, he came to my tent, and he said a one-liner, a very solemn thank you. And that satisfaction that I felt that day, I've never felt as a junior doctor working in Singapore from the rest of my patients. And that was the satisfaction that still makes me go on doing medicine currently. This is a body disposal elective form. I had to fill this form up before I climbed any high mountain. If you see a red box, number 1, if I die on the mountain, I prefer to be left there. Number 2, I prefer to be cremated. Number 3, I prefer to be repatriated back to Singapore. So you can imagine the look on my father when I asked him, "Dad, what do you like?" That's something I'll never forget. But of course, I had to downplay it and say, it's pretty much safe, they're trying to cover themselves, this is okay. But I grew to find out that mountains are indeed a very dangerous environment. This is a picture taken from Camp 1 of Mount Everest, looking into the western Kum, and the mountain in front of you is Lhotse, the 4th highest mountain in the world. There's some yellow tents that's dispersed in the foreground. That's Camp 1. There was this huge avalanche that came from the right slope, and swept away the entire bunch of tents. And one of my friends who was climbing friends, he was at Camp 1 when where this photo was taken, and he actually saw all these tents getting swept away. He also saw one of the Sherpas getting swept away into a crevasse where he passed away. And he turned back and returned back to base camp, and he said, "I'm calling it quits." He said, "I've dreamt of this moment my whole life. I read about Everest in books, I've watched it in documentaries, and I'm so fortunate to be standing here and witnessing all these things through my own eyes. I think this is enough. I've come so far, I'm very fortunate. I know how is it like growing up without a father, and I do want my 2 young kids to grow up without a father." So probably when he reached back home, everyone will be thinking that it's a failure for him, He spent so much of time and money going to Everest, came back halfway willingly. But to me, I think that was his biggest success, because he chose the more difficult choice, to turn back at adversity. He had the courage to do so. This is Camp 2 of Mount Everest. The yellow things that you see there are actually tents, perched precariously on this rock tower. Why? Because there's no space anywhere else on the mountain. It's so steep and difficult to climb. And to this day, I still found climbing this mountain more technically and physically more challenging than climbing Mount Everest. We became the first Singaporean team to summit this mountain. And when I went back to potential sponsors and media telling them to pitch my climb for potential funds in the future, they were like, "What's Everest? Is it something that you eat?" That's the response that I got. But to this day, I'm more proud of having summited Everest than Mount Everest. Which comes to my next question. How is success measured? Is it just to summit a mountain? No. Maybe. But summiting every mountain is not my definition of success. I learned that if I had turned back 30 meters from the summit, I wouldn't be here talking to all of you today. But I will still be the enriched person that I am, traveling to the new countries, meeting new people, embracing new cultures, and the lessons that I learned will be far beyond what any classroom in the world would have been able to teach me. I learned that success is personal. The destination is not defined as a common goal that everyone sees, but it's your own definition. My Everest wasn't climbing to the summit of Everest and standing there with that photo. My Everest was actually the difficulties that I faced along the way during the journey. It's when friends that I trusted and asked them for support told me, put a hand on my shoulder and told me, look, what you're doing is nothing new. People have done it before. Girls have done it before. So what's so special about you doing it? And this is the disappointment that I felt when people I could trust did not even believe in me. And these are the hurdles that I overcome, and that was my biggest Everest. Let alone everyone is climbing the Everest, be it a child taking care of his handicapped parent, or a student studying, doing part-time work and supporting and allowing his sibling to go to school, or anyone who's fighting a terminal illness. All these Everests, I feel, are much tougher than the physical Everest that I conquered. Everyone is climbing their own Everest, and the moment you step foot on the summit of your own Everest, the satisfaction that everyone feels will be far beyond the norm of success. Now that I'm back in Singapore, life has changed. When I came back in the airport and I was waiting to see my family and friends who were there right from the start till the very end, I wanted to hug them and tell them the stories and cry with them. Instead, there was a barrage of media. And this media prevented me from really thanking the people who I wanted to be with. And even now, sometimes I'm not spending enough time with them because of a lot of other reasons. When I'm back at work, I'm always regarded as the doctor who climbed Everest. Patients think that, oh, this guy should be able to cure my illness. Because I climbed Everest. But I don't understand how that has got to do with diagnosing a problem and curing the patient. Medicine is an apprenticeship. It's through the many years of learning that you have to go through and become a senior doctor with the experience and skills learned. Just by climbing Everest, I can't cure illnesses. And I want to climb through the ranks of medicine through my own merit and not ride on this wave of success. And I feel that's a harder thing for me to do. So when I show you this picture again and ask you how many of you think that I was successful by standing on the summit of this mountain, maybe you'll think twice before raising up your hand. By saying this, I'm still extremely proud of this moment in my life because the success that I see when I see this picture is very different from what you would have felt when you saw the picture. My favorite definition of success is knowing when to say no and being happy with it. So how many of you would have noticed that I actually spend 1/3 of my time on the success part of this stage and 1/3 of my time on the failure part of the stage, and actually 1/3 of my time in the middle, on this line that separates success and failure. Success and failure is as broad as this narrow strip of paper that divides the two. Expand your mind. In every success, there is a failure, and in every failure, there is indeed a success. What is your definition of success? Thank you. Thank you.